Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into the high-stakes, science-backed reality of property restoration and the invisible dangers of water intrusion. You know, when a pipe bursts or a storm floods your basement, that visible water, yeah, that's literally just the beginning of the problem. We're going to map out the exact timeline of a water disaster and uncover the rigorous and honestly surprisingly scientific process required to save a building before the damage becomes permanent.
24 to 48. Now that's not just some random estimate. It's the exact number of hours you have before microscopic mold spores set up camp in your wet walls. It starts a very dangerous ticking clock. From the actual second water breaches your home, the whole environment changes. The moment things like drywall, carpet padding, or wood framing get saturated, they instantly become breathing grounds. And if you don't extract that water and start structural drying within this incredibly tight window, well, you're no longer just dealing with a water leak, you're fighting a toxic mold hazard.
So what actually happens to a house in those critical first 24 hours? Well, let's break down the anatomy of a water emergency, from minute zero all the way to full restoration. And to make this a bit more concrete, we're going to use the unique geographic and architectural challenges of Richmond, Virginia as our ultimate case study. By looking at a city that constantly battles these intense environmental pressures, we can see exactly why speed, science, and professional expertise are just absolutely vital.
Section 1. Richmond's unique water risks. It's basically a perfect storm.
Seriously, Richmond is a perfect storm for water damage. Geographically, it sits right on the fall line where the Piedmont meets the coastal plain, which means the James River is super susceptible to flooding whenever tropical storms roll up from the Atlantic. Then, you've got the ground itself. The clay-heavy soils out in places like Henrico and Chesterfield counties, they just don't absorb water well at all. Instead of soaking in, rainwater just pools against foundations and shoves its way right into basements. Add in the beautiful historic architecture, like those balloon frame homes in the Fan District, where empty wall cavities basically act like water slides from the attic all the way down to the basement, and top the whole thing off with a humid, subtropical climate that acts like rocket fuel for rapid mold growth.
It is a relentless environmental pressure. As local experts often point out, when storms dump rain on Richmond, that water literally has nowhere to go except directly into crawl spaces and against foundation walls. Whether you're talking about historic stone foundations in Church Hill leaking during a downpour, or maybe poor lot grading in newer subdivisions that funnels water right toward the front door, the threat is always there. The water just has to go somewhere, and unfortunately, it's usually inside.
Moving on to Section 2, Categories of Contamination. Let's look at the 3 categories.
Here's the thing. Not all water is created equal. The danger level escalates dramatically depending on where that water came from. Category 1 is clean water. Think a burst supply pipe or melting snow. For this, it's just a pure race to dry the structure before mold takes over. Category 2 is gray water. This comes from things like an overflowing washing machine or dishwasher, and it's got moderate contaminants, so it definitely requires careful sanitization. But Category 3, black water, that is an entirely different beast. We're talking sewage backups or river floodwater that's heavily contaminated with bacteria, viruses, the whole shebang. When Category 3 hits, it demands the absolute disposal of porous materials. Carpets, drywall, they have to go because they simply cannot be safely cleaned.
All right, Section 3, Emergency Mitigation Steps. Let's look at the action plan.
Now, real professionals don't just walk in, plug in a few fans, and call it a day. They execute a rigid 3-step action plan designed to stabilize the environment and systematically reverse the damage. Step 1 is emergency water removal. This means stopping the active flow and sucking up that standing water immediately. Step 2 is intensive structural drying and dehumidification, which physically pulls trapped moisture out of the building materials. Finally, Step 3 is complete reconstruction, basically rebuilding those damaged areas to get your home looking exactly like it did before the loss.
So how does this actually play out against our ticking clock? Well, a premium response means a frantic 60-minute emergency dispatch to stop that active water flow. Technicians use massive truck-mounted extractors that can suck up thousands of gallons an hour, working at warp speed to beat that critical 24 to 48-hour mold window. But once the standing water is gone, the pace totally shifts. The next 3 to 5 days become very methodical, dedicated purely to structural drying. And as we're about to see, that drying phase is way more complex than it sounds.
This brings us to Section 4, the science of drying. We're talking precision protocols.
Did you know professional restoration technicians actually rely on a science called psychrometry?
It's basically the math of calculating vapor pressure to figure out the exact dehumidification needed to actively yank moisture out of dense building materials. In a place like Richmond, where summer humidity often spikes way above 70%, that heavy, wet air outside actually fights against evaporation. So no, you can't just open a window. Professionals literally have to calculate the exact airflow and use heavy-duty commercial refrigerant dehumidifiers to manipulate the indoor environment and forcefully draw that hidden water out of your walls and subfloors.
And they aren't just guessing here. Every single action taken by a certified crew is dictated by strict industry standards, specifically something called the IICRC 500. That means these technicians are using penetrating moisture meters and non-invasive sensors to physically prove that a structure is dry. They're doing daily moisture mapping, comparing the wet spots to dry, unaffected reference areas until a mathematical dry standard is officially met. And this crazy level of strict documentation, it's not just for your peace of mind. It's exactly what insurance adjusters need to see to approve your claim and verify the job was done perfectly.
Which brings us to a really vital comparison: doing it yourself versus calling in the pros. Look, those basic hardware store fans and tiny dehumidifiers, they're mostly just pushing wet air around. They only dry the surface, leaving you totally guessing about what's lurking inside your walls. Professional equipment, on the other hand, dries a house 10 to 20 times faster. Plus, these techs are using thermal imaging cameras to spot hidden moisture trapped deep inside wall cavities or right under the floorboards, places your naked eye could literally never see.
And the consequences of getting this wrong are absolutely severe. If you shut off those drying machines before that strict mathematical dry standard is hit, you are basically inviting disaster into your home. Incomplete drying leads directly to structural rot, which weakens the actual wood framing of your house. Worse, it allows massive secondary damage, like toxic mold colonies, to completely thrive in the dark spaces right behind your drywall. The water might look like it's gone, but trust me, the danger is just settling in. Well, I hope this explainer has shed some light on the invisible science of property restoration. Dealing with water damage is literally a race against time, biology, and the environment itself. But by understanding these rigorous protocols, the specialized equipment, and why a scientifically proven dry standard is so absolutely crucial, you're going to be way better equipped to protect your property. So I want to leave you with this vital question to think about the next time you face a leak. If water breached your home today, are you confident your walls are truly dry? Or is a hidden clock already ticking?